My name's Quinn Slobodian. I'm a historian. I teach history at Boston University in the United States. I think mostly when we think of the world, we imagine a kind of patchwork of nation states, colored different colors. The point of my book is to argue that there's a whole other geography. There's a geography of zones that perforate the world of nation states. And this is actually how capitalism works, through these pinholes and small enclaves and spaces in the world map. And more importantly, some people on the libertarian right have taken this as a kind of inspiration to transform politics altogether into a potential future where not democracy, but just the corporate bottom line govern people's lives. Recently, I think in the United States, we've seen a pretty incredible convergence of the power of big tech with Washington and the presidency. And the question for me, especially in light of my book, is whether or not this will mean a kind of movement from an old model of state capture by corporate elites to a new version of state exit. Musk wants to go to Mars. He also wants to build a company town in Texas. Will the deconstruction of the administrative state at the central level lead to even further fragmentation and decentralization of power in the United States? This is something that I think is of great concern right now. So I think the sort of end game of building a world that's filled with tax havens and offshore manufacturing sites and special economic zones isn't necessarily just to allow places that people can exit and take their wealth to and sort of drain national revenue. But the idea is also to kind of pressure the large legacy nation states to transform themselves internally. So to make old nations also look more like tax havens and zones. And corporate tax is a perfect example of this, where over the years, small countries, places like Hong Kong, Singapore, have lowered corporate taxes, and this in turn has put more and more pressure on social democracies and places with welfare states to lower their corporate taxes to keep pace with the competitors. So there's a kind of a ratcheting cycle of blackmail that also happens through the circulation of capital that I think is one of the main reasons that people are feeling a sense of increasing precarity and often taking flight in protest votes to the far right and other parties. Until very recently, under the Biden administration, there were many attempts to, I think, push back against this model of total fragmentation, exit, and capital flight. The return of the state, you could say, during the COVID pandemic, and the kind of move towards industrial policy, green energy transition, a kind of investment role for the government rather than just standing back and letting private companies do the business. This was a real switch in direction, and people like Biden saw themselves as being anti-neoliberal. However, now obviously the tide has moved back, and because America is the world's largest power, unfortunately, as America goes, so goes the rest of the world. And I wonder now how we can prepare the way for a kind of return of rationality in a couple of years, or if it will be too late by then.